Hey everybody, I'm Todd Wyant and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast. You're invited to join my mission to embrace and share the innovations transforming the AEC, MEP, and manufacturing industries. My guest today has spent the last few years raising awareness around the interoperability, technology, and the cultural challenges facing everyone in the AEC industry by helping to introduce the hashtag shared pains concept to bring together multiple perspectives in order for solutions and progress to be made. I'm very excited to have on founder and CEO of Spectrum AEC and the executive director of the Construction Progress Coalition, Nathan Wood. Welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thanks, Todd. It's great to be here.
Can you start by sharing the heart and the mission behind the hashtag shared pains?
Oh, man. So this actually goes way back to 2013, I believe it was. Sasha Reed, who was at Bluebeam at the time, and Kyle Hughes, who at the time was with Skanska Construction, got together, realizing that it was architects submitting their PDF drawings out of Revit or whatever their CAD solution was to all of us general contractors, using those drawings in our everyday lives as far as document control and RFIs and everything that we were doing. So as Bluebeam started coming out with all these really interesting efficiencies like hyperlinking and batch searching, we started to realize, well, crap, this tool is only as good as the quality of the PDFs that were coming out of those solutions. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of born out of that and realizing that we were entering this whole world of digital transformation, data interoperability, all these words that were like, whoa, we're just talking about PDFs. It's like, well, yeah, we're talking about PDFs. But we're talking about a lot more than just PDFs here.
Right.
So the Construction PDF Coalition became the Construction Progress Coalition in 2017 when we formed together with the Construction Open Standards Alliance. So now we were general contractors, architects, engineers, and the software providers on their side that were also frustrated with, hey, we know our customers want our systems to talk together, but there's, if there's not a standard out there, then we have nothing to rely off of. So we've always just sort of been gathering different groups together to try and solve these shared pains, these shared interoperability where, I either want the data insights or I want the exchange of that data that gives you those insights to be more efficient. So you either come from one side or the other, but either way, solving that is the shared pains that we're really trying to address.
Yeah, love that. So how do you define a digital transformation?
So I actually, through different conversations with other thought leaders from other industries, have come to really break it down into three different steps. The first one being digitization. So the first step of how do we just get things that are analog, that are more human readable, to be machine readable, so that we can have insights and have dashboards and have all this great stuff. But if that creates a lot of inefficiency of duplicate entry, then we're not really solving the problem. So digitalization would be solving both the getting the data you need and kind of making it a little bit more efficient to exchange that data from one system to another. But then the last one would be that digital transformation. So the transformation is, how did I ever do XYZ before this tool came about? The Uber example. And so that's really, how are you actually changing the way you do your job because of that tech? That's the digital transformation.
Gotcha. So we're all in the midst of this social distancing with COVID-19 disruption going on. How do you see that serving as a catalyst for digital transformation?
Wake up call, right? I mean, I think that's the whole discussion we're having now is what digital transformations are being required because of social distancing. What things like wet signatures on permits are preventing construction, which is a critical activity that needs to be happening because those that need to be in that office signing can't go to the office. And we have things like DocuSign, but yet we're not using them. So I think this whole thing is really shedding a light on our inability to go digital and go remote. I mean, obviously construction, you can't, certain things we can do more things offsite, and it's certainly pushing that. But construction by nature is a physical activity, so you need to have guys there. But everybody else that supports that system, really, a lot of our folks on the technology side can do a lot of their work from home, but we find these little pinch points where you can't, and it's really exposing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really curious at the longer term ramifications of all this with everybody just totally up in the air, trying to figure it out remote, and I think there's going to be some things that people were like, oh yeah, that was really good. And then there's other things that's like, that was totally inefficient. Why would we ever go back to that way of thinking again?
Well, and there's cultural things too. Like prior to this pandemic, I was never one to typically turn my camera on because it's not. And it's interesting because in Australia, everybody turns their cameras on, and a lot of Europe and UK as well. But for some reason, in the US, we don't like turning our cameras on. Right. But ever since the pandemic, I've been just been turning mine on. And it's kind of an interesting social experiment to see, all right, who else is going to turn theirs on too?
Yeah, for sure.
Try to get everybody to turn over to this. We can still be in person and be virtual at the same time if we get over our kind of taboo stigmas with it.
Yeah. And it really does help seeing the person on the other end of the line instead of just hearing this random voice coming through.
Totally.
So you mentioned kind of guidelines for the industry at the beginning when you were talking about the shared pains. Why is it important to develop those guidelines and then follow them in the industry?
Yeah, and it's important to distinguish guidelines from standards because, too often they go, oh, Construction Progress Coalition, you're a standards organization. Well, I don't want to be labeled, I don't want this group to be labeled as developing standards because the idea is that most of these standards are already out there. What they need are guidelines. What they need is the ability to kind of condense and digest and contextualize a lot of these standards and have it make sense for all these different perspectives so they can come together and find solutions. So yeah, the guidelines are really intended to be dynamic, to be adapted to the different perspectives that are reading it and create that universal language so that we can all speak the same language and solve this data interoperability challenge together.
So how far off do you think the industry is from really getting to that dream and vision?
Oh man. Well, innovation happens in a down economy, and whether we'd like to admit it or not, we are very quickly entering this down economy. So
hopefully not too down.
Yeah. But the first thing that's going to need to come back up is infrastructure and a lot of these kind of basic needs that we've been putting on hold for so long because we're just too busy with other things. So I think either way, there's going to be a demand on the construction industry, that there is a call that we're going to have to answer. So I would actually say in light of recent events, I would put the timeline shorter, like a 3 to 5 year rather than a 5 to 10 year. But that's, again, I'm always optimistic.
Hey, I like being optimistic. It's better than the alternative.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I find really interesting is the cross section between technology and culture. How would you define that for the AEC firms?
I think it's very interesting, and we've been throwing around a lot of words. So I'm going to throw out some words I've just come to learn more about. I was speaking with Amy Marks with Autodesk, who's our queen of prefab. Who, if you haven't had her on, you definitely need to get her on. She's awesome.
Nice, noted.
But the term industrialized construction, I had to look up okay, what is the word industry? And if you actually look up the word industry, it's really fundamentally about bringing people together to make work in factories and make products in factories, which is truly what we're trying to do with everything that is offsite construction, with modularization, with all those things. And that is fundamentally a disruptive process to the way that we've always done it. So again, the same way Uber and the sharing economy for cars has disrupted taxis, the same way Airbnb has disrupted the hotel business. What is that new methodology, that new way of thinking that's going to come in and disrupt construction? That people ask the question, is Katera and that kind of single source turnkey, again, to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that those are the questions that we have to ask now of where are both the decision makers at the top, those who supply the actual construction, the materials and the design and the permitting, where are they all changing their processes, and then how and what technology is enabling them to do that. It's really all three of those things that come together. And so culture is a huge part of it, the same way with Uber. I mean, I watched it from San Francisco, from it first coming out in the early days of just black cars to where they've come today with Uber Pool and all these different selection choices that you have in the customer base that they've grown to, and how a driver in San Francisco is very different from a driver in Nashville, Tennessee. Right. But you kind of love that about it, right? It's almost become a reflection of the culture. So it's almost like you're one of those Uber for technology software when you are almost a reflection of that culture within that industry.
Yeah, that's great. So how do you go about building greater empathy between architects, owners, and the trades?
Um, so, and empathy itself is kind of a interesting word in this industry, especially in construction. You don't usually hear the word empathy. People kind of just get queasy hearing it, right? But this idea of respect for perspective, that everybody's an expert in something, but nobody's an expert in everything. And how do we recognize that the trade contractors are frankly more knowledgeable in certain things, and any general contractor that thinks that they're smarter than a subcontractor, should know better than that. But vice versa too. General contractors aren't all just numbnuts. They actually do see from a larger picture, logistics and scheduling and other things, and they play a role as long as they respect that role and don't overstep it. And you can have the exact same discussion for architects, engineers, anybody else up and down the supply chain. So it's almost that women are from Mars, men are from Venus, or whatever, right? A conversation that everybody's going to be different, and how do we all complement each other to solve those problems? I think that's where diversity and all these other things that we're seeing data behind that true innovation and true efficiency come from that. We need the same thing, not just within our teams, but across our teams between architects, engineers, contractors, and subs.
Yeah. How do people learn the language of the other person in order to slow themselves down to really listen to what they're saying?
Exactly.
So change and innovation can seem like kind of scary words that get thrown out there, but how do you get somebody to embrace change and innovation?
Well, I think, you certainly can't tell them to do it. That usually doesn't work, even if you're a leader telling people to embrace it. And I think you have to show it. You have to embrace it yourself. Like if you are not comfortable with change yourself, you certainly shouldn't be telling others to or teaching others to. So that's kind of that step one, is actually, truly embracing it before you coach it, and understand that everybody's going to come at it at different levels. So I'm going to be a lot more natural at it and have more of that growth mindset. Some or others are going to be, more of that fixed mindset. And so recognizing where they are and helping them along the way, and not pushing too hard, but not being too soft either.
So I think oftentimes a lot of people can just get in their own way and be their greatest stumbling block when it comes to changing processes. And but how do you get somebody to recognize that they're their own stumbling block in their way, and then get out of their way?
Are you talking to me? Because I feel like we're having a conversation, just you and me here. Because I mean that one of my biggest challenges is trying to be my own best self so that I can show others how to be their best self. Because it's really hard. Like there's no easy way to do it.
It takes a lot of self-awareness.
It absolutely. And that's where it starts, right? That's, step one of the 12-step process is admitting that you have a problem.
Yeah.
So and you can either ignore it or you can excuse it away, but it doesn't mean that it goes away. And so I think it's really about prioritizing, of all the problems, of all the challenges, and also of all the opportunities that we don't have time for, in this world of ever evolving change. How do we prioritize what are really important things that I should be focusing on? How do I, but also, addressing those urgent items, but figuring out ways that you can, automate those urgent items and not allow them to become urgent items, so you can spend more time on those kind of important rocks and future thinking.
Yeah. So a minute ago, you mentioned the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Do you think that somebody can learn to get more grit? Because I think with a growth mindset, I think of somebody that's has a lot of grit and is just going to like buckle down and figure it out. And they're okay, getting their hands dirty and mixing it up. So do you think that, is grit something that can be taught?
Yes, it can be taught. And this goes back to, I draw a lot of different analogies because I've done the Myers-Briggs test assessment. It's not a test.
There are no wrong answers.
Yeah, there are no wrong answers. Even though there is, all the CEOs are apparently ENFPs, which is why if I took the early test and I was in ENFP, which F stands for feeling, overthinking, and P standing for perception over judging.
Yeah.
And you can actually make the argument in that side of the world. And or if you take the DISC test, you're a high D. That also means you're more deterministic. You're more on the judgmental side. And I think as you look at those personalities, which again are innate, the more you understand them and the more you understand where you fit on them, the more you can start to change. So yeah, so if you do realize like, oh, I do tend to kind of focus on my previous wins and repeating things, and I kind of always wish things were always the way they used to be, and you happen to be like, oh, I am a fixed mindset, I am a J, I am a D, I am a whatever. Or actually in that case, it'd be more of C, I believe, the conscientious.
Right.
But either way, as you learn more of the psychology side of things, like regardless of which assessment you take, understand those and really focus on, where are your weak spots, but also where can you accentuate your strengths. I think that's what's really cool about bringing that stuff back into the workplace in the appropriate way. Not saying like you should be an accountant or you should be an actor, you should be whatever. It's not about that. It's about really understanding, where do you come from and how do you use that to your strength, but also bring people around you that can complement your potential weaknesses.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love getting into those personality tests, and I'm a very high I. So okay. I love people and being around people and hearing their stories and all that stuff, which can be a great strength, can also be a bad weakness because we'll look for those people.
Blind spots.
That's right.
Yeah, we have our blind spots.
Yeah.
Yep.
C is very low on my thing, so details don't get me into the weeds too much. I'll burn out very quickly, but big picture, I'm your guy.
Yep. We probably have about the same one.
Nice. So what are some routines that people can look for to start building some success around innovating and coming to better understand people in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first and foremost, like we have a tendency, and actually I have a tendency to almost downplay being in the fixed mindset, even though there's all these books and studies saying you should be growth mindset. But it's like being an introvert versus an extrovert, right? Like everybody should be an extrovert, but half the population are introverts. Okay.
Right.
So like
sure.
half the population is going to be a fixed mindset, and that's okay.
Well, there's nothing
wrong with
too.
it. Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, exactly. It's a sliding scale, and two, you're going to fit somewhere on that 50-50 curve.
Yeah.
And again, that's where emotional intelligence and your understanding of that allows you to change. And that's where society as a whole and evolution as a whole will push towards more of a growth mindset as we all move that direction. But for those who do happen to say, hey, I'm a fixed mindset, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a fixed mindset. And I would argue that there is something right to that, in that there is something to, well, do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when that happened? They're like, the history is extremely important, and we need to capture that history, and we need to contextualize that history. And so being able to know how things used to be from those who really obsess about it is a really important thing for those who are, just jumping off cliffs and taking risks to do, right? I mean, that's the proper balance, but recognizing that they play a role of the devil's advocate, but they shouldn't necessarily be leading the ship. And that's, that's, I think, an important understanding, especially if you are the leader of a company and you happen to be in a fixed mindset, that maybe this is your time to step aside and let somebody else, kind of take the reins, but be there as their mentor, be there as their challenger, be there as their devil's advocate, but really let them take the ship, because we're in such a volatile time where you need that growth mindset.
Yeah. It makes me think of the generational divide that's going on in the industry too. Not that older generations are in fixed mindset and youngers are always the growth mindset, but there is that divide between all the different generations in the industry. When you're looking at it through a culture lens, what kind of effect do you see the generational divide playing in the industry?
Well, I mean, Dan Smolo, who's on the Shared Pains podcast as well, he talks about, at Walsh, they have 5 different generations now within their company that, represent the greatest generation: baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z now. And, that's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different experiences, because your personality is shaped by the experiences that you've been through. And so if you don't remember 9/11 happening, which is some of the kids
mind-boggling
coming into college, right? Like that is that next generation, which is crazy, versus those that don't remember internet, which, I was in, myself in middle school and it was just kind of making that switch from dial up and taking up your phone to, oh, okay, we can actually get some sort of a cable or radio internet in our area.
Yeah.
And those are the things where you become more, used to that thing. And now my daughter, who's just turned 3, can now tell Alexa, not Alexa, hey, Google, play Peppa Pig, and we'll play Peppa Pig on YouTube. I'm like, oh no, we've hit that stage. But when you're that young and so comfortable with that, she actually already knows the logic of how it thinks, and can speak digital better than anybody that will have come up in a different generation. And so I think those that are coming at it from older have to respect those that's like, wow, they're going to be a lot better at this stuff than me because they were doing this stuff in their formative years when I wasn't. So I don't have to be a tech whiz, but I do have to respect that it's taking over the world. Like there's no doubt in that. So, at least understand a little bit of how it's working. And even if you don't want to touch it, understand the impact that it's making for the things that you do impact, like, again, organizational charts and key financial decisions and things like that. Because if you just put it in the IT guy's court and don't manage his budget appropriately and don't understand the compelling arguments that he's making, we can't move forward with this stuff, and we'll still kind of stay within our silos of information.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued with the mentoring going both ways, of having somebody that's younger, knowing technology native, mentoring some of the people that may not be as comfortable with technology, and then the reverse of getting all that great industry knowledge and getting all the tips and tricks from the people who have been there and done that and come up through the slog of it all, and having that wisdom imparted onto the younger generation. I see that as a really healthy way to go about this generational divide.
Well, and the ability to create the environment where it's safe for both the top down to be vulnerable and the bottom up to be honest and to say something that might be defiant or whatever in a safe space. And that's in the Spectrum AEC workshops, like what at the end of the day, whether the focus is lean or BIM or what new technology we should be using, it always comes back to that same conversation of, are we really communicating? Like, are we really effectively, do we really understand what each other wants and needs? Because if we don't do that, none of this stuff matters.
Right. Yeah. Well, it goes back to the empathy. Are you really listening to what the other person's point of view really is?
Well, WIFM is the acronym we always bring out. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Is, if we can't answer each other's WIFM and come up with a new creative solution that is resolving multiple WIFMs, because really the different WIFMs are our shared pains. And how we resolve them is by coming together, talking about them openly, and really thinking innovatively about how to rearrange, all these pieces of the puzzle to make them fit together better. And until we take time and stop and do that, which, thanks to all this new events, we have some time to do that. As long as we can do more remote collaboration, we can solve these problems and we can start moving forward in this downtime. But we have to get together and we have to turn our cameras on. We have to start talking to each other, start empathizing, and then start learning the language of digital interoperability and figuring out what's in it for me in that digital language, have that digital literacy so that those that are really good at coding can solve these problems really quick. But we have to speak the correct language to them that works in their digital language.
Yeah. Well, around here, we have the phrase of tell them the why. So really get into the heart of, let's explain the reason why we're doing something. It's not just that we're doing something because we made it up out of thin air, or there's a reason behind every intentional move. So let's explain that to them. And when people understand that why, and they can truly grasp that, it seems to click them. Even if they disagree with the outcome of it, they can go, oh, okay, I see their logic. I see their motivation behind this. Might not agree with it, but I can move forward with it.
Oh, it's huge. Absolutely. Start with why. Simon Sinek, right?
That's right. So how do you go about educating and training those in the industry?
Well, I mean, it's interesting you chose educating and training, because I actually separate those two words out between what really is education, and education being that consensus building, that language building, that understanding of, are we on the same page with why and what it is that we're doing? Then when we get into the how we actually do it is where I draw that line to training. And training is, okay, now that I'm in the situation, that I understand the context of, and I know holistically what I need to do, what are the actual steps? What are what's the procedure to do that? That training can be, very much on demand, and needs to be, just in time and ready there and accessible. And there's different training platforms and other ways you can deliver that. But kind of combining that with, getting everybody together to have sessions where we're going through the education part, and then letting them go and do that on-demand training in the just-in-time fashion is really the best way to deliver change in a kind of effective way, knowing that we're all super busy and can't take all this time, but we have to take, some time to get together, do the education part, and then, make sure we build in time before we're going to do a new task to do the on-demand training.
Yeah, I love how you separate those, because I feel like it's all too common when you get a new technology thing to just dive into the clicks and picks and figure out how the system actually works, but you don't have any context around it. So then you get frustrated of like, oh, this isn't working the way I wanted to. And you're only really using, 5% of the software anyway. Where if you had taken the time to kind of slow down at the beginning, unpack the context, why am I using this? What's the purpose of this? Then that training would go so much further, and you would be able to start hitting the ground running a lot harder and faster.
Well, and for those that are early beta testers, this whole CDX language that we have with all of our plugs and our personas and it are different. They are intended to both communicate how a new setting is built, and also to provide that feedback too. Because how often do we sit in those user feedback sessions where they're bitching about whatever feature they don't like, but they're not really truly able to communicate effectively what it is that they want.
Right. Yeah.
And so it provides this kind of common language, that this simple tool to kind of move these icons around and create some logic around, okay, what really is it? What is the scenario that you're in? What is the context, and what are these data points within this RFI or this submittal or this pay app or this change order, whatever that you need. So they go, okay, if that's really what you need, like either we have it or we don't, and we can very easily put this on the roadmap. But at least we're not going through multiple levels of translation, because I feel like right now the whole thing is lost in translation.
Yeah, agreed. So I'd love for you to take some time and tell us about the Construction Shared Pains podcast, Spectrum AEC, and Construction Progress Coalition. You're a busy guy.
Well, with all this time home in my basement, gotta put some stuff out. But so Construction Shared Pains podcast, we're working through season 3. Of course, we have to add a new episode 1 with all this coronavirus, which is kind of setting our theme for the whole season. But it's bringing together different perspectives across architecture, engineering, construction, operations, and technology, really around the 4 phases of digesting what is that challenge, whether it's lack of diversity in the workplace or just this need for open API integrations. We kind of span a lot of different topics, but go through digesting that topic, debating the different perspectives on really kind of what's important about it, those key decision factors moving forward in the decide section, and then who and how we're delivering those out to the industry in kind of ways that they can get involved. So trying to follow almost the TED Radio Hour, if you like NPR and the TED Talks, but that style of bringing multiple different folks together, and spend way too much time post producing them. But it's a fun hobby, right? But it is fun.
You guys do a great job. I think it's a must listen.
Yeah. Thank you. And thankfully, because it takes so long, we only have about 12 episodes. But real good content out there. And so and a lot of the experiences come from what I do with Spectrum AEC, which I mentioned a little bit of, but since 2016, left DPR construction, and a lot of my experiences both on the corporate innovation and kind of organizational development, and organizational psychology, for that matter, not by any formal training, but certainly reading books and experiencing, but certainly understanding this AEC industry and having experience with multiple different contract structures as far as hard bid projects versus light design build versus fully integrated project delivery, and also the CM at risk and more of those infrastructure projects, and how all these different variables of people, process, technology, and contract and legal really come together, and kind of just making sense of it. So support everyone from software to industry to government with really making sense of this fourth industrial revolution and its impact on the AEC industry.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And then Construction Progress Coalition, last one that I went through earlier. You can go to constructionprogress.org to learn more about what we're doing there with the Common Data Exchange CDX initiatives. We've got 4 initiatives: the request for information, the design to fabrication, the pay applications and work in progress report, as well as the reality capture is our 4th initiative. So really working through those interoperability shared pains, mapping them out and showing where solutions do exist through each of those initiatives. And so you can learn more about how to become a member and join as a delegate and push those forward at constructionprogress.org/membership.
Thank you. And how do people get in touch with you besides the websites that you just gave out?
Myself, yes. So you can reach on Twitter. It's at Nathan C. Wood, or feel free to email me, nathan@spectrumaec.com. Or if you are more interested in the CPC stuff, nathan@constructionprogress.org. So make it easy.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us to talk through shared pains and the power of words.
Thank you, Todd. This was fun.
Yeah, really appreciate it. And thank you to all those listening. If you're interested in learning any more, you can visit our sponsor, Applied Software, at ASTI.com for more information. You can also listen to this podcast anywhere by simply going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to check out our website, bridgingthegappod.com. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on the Bridging the Gap podcast. Keep innovating.